The moment Dan Goldman erupted wasn't just another heated exchange. It felt like a rupture in the carefully managed narrative surrounding one of the most sensitive political scandals in recent memory. As Pam Bondi attempted to deflect questions about the alleged Epstein-Trump email, her responses grew increasingly evasive, leaning on vague legal language and procedural ambiguity. But Goldman wasn't buying it. He zeroed in on the inconsistency. If there was nothing damaging in the communication, why hide it? Why stall, redirect, and refuse to give a direct answer under pressure? That's when the tone shifted. Goldman's frustration wasn't theatrical. It was pointed, prosecutorial, and relentless. He framed the issue not as a partisan attack, but as a question of transparency and accountability, hammering home the idea that the American public has seen this pattern before: delay, deny, and bury. What made the moment explosive wasn't just the accusation, it was the implication. By refusing to acknowledge or release the email, Bondi inadvertently amplified its significance. Goldman capitalized on that hesitation, suggesting that the concealment itself could be more telling than the contents. The room tightened. Observers could sense the shift from routine oversight to something far more consequential. This wasn't just about Epstein anymore. It was about who knew what, when, and why they chose to keep it hidden. Goldman's line of questioning painted a picture of a system protecting itself, and whether that perception is fully accurate or not, it's politically devastating. In that moment, Bondi wasn't just defending a decision. She was standing at the center of a narrative that continues to unravel, one unanswered question at a time.
New York recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I went over to the department yesterday for a couple of hours to review some of the unredacted materials. And I am looking forward to your detailed explanation for why you have withheld almost half of the documents, which is required by the bill. Now, obviously, there are 3 million documents, so I didn't get through much. But one thing I didn't see was the client list that you said you had on your desk a year ago. I did, however, find a couple of important documents: an 86-page prosecution memo from the Southern District of New York and a draft indictment from Florida against Jeffrey Epstein's co-conspirators. For reasons that I cannot understand nor are permitted by the bill, they were still redacted, even for members of Congress. So, Ms. Bondi, will you commit right here to immediately providing those two documents in unredacted form to members of Congress? Not a complicated question.
Well, I guess it is for you, because you have a law degree and those are privileged.
Okay, they're not privileged, but we will discuss that later. I also found an email that I have right here from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell that was unredacted, and it included notes of statements that Donald Trump made about his prior relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, there is no reason for this to be hidden from the American people. There is no privilege, there is no attorney-client privilege, and I see you're checking with your staff, and I can assure you, staff, this is not under attorney-client privilege because it was sent from Jeffrey Epstein to Ghislaine Maxwell. Will you commit to publicly providing the unredacted version of this so that the American people can understand the extent of Donald Trump's lies about his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein?
You're about as good of a lawyer today as you were when you tried to impeach President Trump in 2016. Have you apologized for that in 2019?
So will you unredact this? Will you
were
unredact
lead
this?
counsel on that. Privileged.
I'm asking you, will you unredact this?
Privileged.
Privileged, of course. I look forward to discussing this more. Now, these are obviously improper redactions.
And let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr. Goldman.
They're not
Even though
privileged,
you used your improper redactions,
you'll like my answer.
to
If we
continue
review
to
them and they're
protect
not privileged,
Donald
Time belongs to
we
the
will
member.
be happy to release them.
We'll
after
stop the
review.
clock. We'll stop the clock. Time belongs to the member. Go ahead.
Even though you used improper redactions to protect Donald Trump and other predators associated with Jeffrey Epstein, you did the exact opposite thing with the survivors and victims of this scheme. So their identification information was really the only thing required to be redacted, and it was not. And it's clear this was not a mistake. This was not by accident. This was not because you only had 30 days when you really used 75, and that doesn't even include all the hours last March that you were redacting it. But I'll tell you why it's clear it wasn't a mistake. There is an email entitled Epstein Victim List. There are 32 names. 1 is redacted, 31 are not. So someone looked at it and decided to redact something. And I will tell you that that is clearly intentional to intimidate these survivors and victims. Now, in an interview last week...
How will you tell me that's intentional?
In an interview last week, Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche...
You can't go off script.
...said that any victim that wants to speak with the department has done so, hopefully. Well, thanks to the incredibly brave people sitting here behind you, we can actually ask them if that's true. Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you, who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses to talk to.
Gentleman's time has expired.
And I yield back.
We will go to the good gentleman from North Carolina, Congressman Knott.
Thank
May
you.
I have a moment, Congressman?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Here we go. Here's the photograph. This is why he wanted to repeat everything that had been said previously on Epstein. This is his state, New York. You probably don't even know who this is. Wahid Mohammed from Afghanistan.
Yes, because I'm no longer a prosecutor.
Convicted of assault. Wow, he represents New York. Wow, yet he doesn't care about the illegal aliens convicted of crimes. Assault and homicide. No longer a prosecutor, so he doesn't care about his constituents. Here we go. Arson, El Salvador, Miguel Palacios. Fermin Flores Ramales, Mexico, rape.
Let's talk about the 70% of immigrants who are detained without a criminal conviction or arrest.
Stop the clock. Stop the clock. Time belongs to Congressman Knott.
This was no longer a routine hearing. It was a direct confrontation where Dan Goldman effectively tore through the defensive wall that Pam Bondi tried to construct. Goldman didn't hedge or soften his tone. He went straight for the critical weakness. Why was an email between Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, one that referenced Donald Trump, being concealed when there was no clear legal basis to classify it as privileged? As Bondi deflected, repeatedly invoking privilege like a hollow shield, Goldman struck back immediately, exposing the contradiction. This was not attorney-client communication, and there was no legitimate justification to keep it hidden from the public. The more pressure mounted, the more Bondi's position began to unravel. She shifted from explanation to personal attacks, from legal reasoning to political diversion, a clear attempt to redirect attention. But that pivot only sharpened Goldman's edge. He wasn't just asking questions anymore, he was building an indictment. The concealment of documents, he argued, was not an oversight, but a deliberate choice, a calculated move to shield powerful figures while exposing victims. And when Goldman pointed out that victim identities were barely redacted while materials tied to Epstein and influential names were selectively blacked out, the narrative flipped instantly. This was no longer about procedure, but about a system that appeared to protect power at the expense of the vulnerable. The explosion wasn't about volume, it was about precision. Goldman forced the room to confront an uncomfortable reality. Not a single victim had been meaningfully engaged by the Department of Justice. Despite all of them reaching out, no one was heard, no one was protected. Meanwhile, documents that could clarify the relationships between powerful individuals remained locked behind layers of redaction. This was no longer about one email. It was about power, enforced silence, and the systematic suffocation of truth in plain sight.